Consumer advocates are calling for a compensation fund of last resort for people who've been harmed by poor financial advice. They're pointing to an example currently in the Supreme Court where a New South Wales couple has fought for years to reach a settlement after losing their home, superannuation and savings following the advice of a financial planner. Dozens more people who lost money through the same advisor stand to receive very little, and it's leading to a push for change, as Amy Bainbridge reports.
Come on in. This is our palace.
This caravan was home for Alex and Tryphena McShane for 7 years after they lost their house through failed investments. What was it like living in here?
It was the one safe place in a world that felt a bit bleak. We'd come in and we'd shut the door and we'd go, we're safe.
So you were fully self-contained?
Solar panels.
Yeah.
If we had an argument, it only lasted 2 metres. Smile, your heart is aching.
Alex McShane's a musician who's also had a long career in local government. His wife Tryphena is an award-winning artist. They were in their mid-50s and had almost paid off their Sydney home when they met financial advisor Steve Navra.
The idea was to have a portfolio that was a mixture of property, cash and investments, and that never happened. It just became the first thing, I think it was margin loans, and
Which we'd never heard of.
we'd turn up to him and there would be a whiteboard and he would just be writing figures and rabbiting on, and it was just total overwhelm.
Steve Navra's Sydney financial advice business attracted hundreds of clients. On his advice, the McShanes leveraged their home to borrow money to invest in Steve Navra's own stock market fund.
Beautiful boy.
They also invested their superannuation and took out a loan for the Great Southern Agricultural Investment Scheme. As the global financial crisis hit, the McShanes became desperate to get their money out.
And we're terrified by what we saw, and we said, we don't want to be in it, we want to get out. And he said, no, it's okay, it's all right, it's okay. You know, I've got a much safer system, and not only that, but it's insured.
Until only recently, the McShanes had no home of their own. All up, they estimate they lost more than $2 million. They borrowed more than $600,000 against their home and sold it before the banks could foreclose.
We felt really alone. We actually felt like we were the stupid ones.
Hi, Tryphena, it's Susie.
Hi, Susie.
The McShanes sued Mr Navra for negligence, but at the 11th hour their lawyers pulled out. So they lodged the case themselves, and with the help of consumer advocate Susie Bennell, they've now reached a settlement.
I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for you. It's a landmark result. They have had 8 or 9 years of being completely wiped out. They can restart their lives, and knowing them as I do, they will take their case and their story and they will share it.
Yep. The settlement is confidential, but it will put the McShanes back on their feet.
What they had done to get to where they did, unassisted and with every hurdle known to man put in front of them, was nothing short of miraculous.
The McShanes' bold step of taking litigation will pay off because they were first in the queue of potential claimants against Steve Navra. Dozens of others who have lost money and were slower to act won't be so lucky. A settlement scheme has been set up by the liquidators of Steve Navra's businesses and his insurer. All the other claimants will have to settle for a stake in that scheme. More than 80 people have so far lined up to claim a share in a pool of just $4 million, but 730 has been told their total claims amount to $30 million.
People have to spend a lot of time and effort and tears and heartache to try and get some sort of redress at the moment, and even then they're left out of pocket. And that points to a real problem in the system, which a last chance compensation scheme can play a role.
The problem of investors losing money through poor advice and not having any redress is increasingly widespread. Consumer advocates want a better safety net to protect people when professional indemnity insurance falls short, as it almost certainly will in the Navra case.
These two ideas have to work in tandem. Professional indemnity insurance has its role to play, and a last chance compensation scheme will have its role, particularly where financial advice firms go insolvent.
Here's some photographs of our beautiful home, the one we lost.
On the Gold Coast, Florence and Will Toms have had a permanent roof over their heads for the past 6 months after spending 4 years in a caravan. They too had to sell their waterfront property to pay debts from their investments through Steve Navra. They estimate they lost almost $2 million and had to go back into the workforce.
Will was working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week.
I felt very depressed. Mostly my depression came from the fact that we didn't have a roof over our head.
That hard work has paid off. In 4 years, the Toms saved enough for a deposit on a unit on the Gold Coast, but unlike the McShanes, they haven't been able to recoup any of their lost investments yet.
Pleased to meet you.
Lovely to meet you finally.
Today, they're meeting Robert and Ilsa Story, who are in the same boat.
Elsa, lovely to meet you.
But actually seeing someone else who's gone through it and is still going through it, it sort of makes me stronger, makes me more angry and get something done, take this further.
But taking it further isn't easy. The Toms were among at least 20 people to complain to the Financial Ombudsman Service about Navra Financial Services. Within months, Steve Navra went bankrupt, making any determination by the Ombudsman ineffective. The only option was to go through the courts, like Trifina and Alex McShane.
I'm pleased they did, but I couldn't do that. It's terrible that someone has to go to those lengths to try and recover money that they've lost.
Steve Navra was discharged from his bankruptcy last year, and he's since been selling property in Melbourne. He declined 730's requests for an interview and said all the advice was given to the best of his ability at the time, and he lost far more of his own money. He told 730 he had adequate insurance for the scope and nature of his business. Alex and Trifina McShane have saved enough money to buy a home with their son. Life is turning around, but it's been a bruising journey.
Everything feels very hollow. The biggest victory will be to no longer ever have to think about any of this again.
Amy Bainbridge reporting.